Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see you guys came out tonight. My name is Spencer, and welcome to the Restigouche Regional Museum After Hours. All you cool cats ready for some poetry. It is my absolute honor tonight to introduce Bob Jensen. He grew up in Dalhousie. He lives on PEI. He has 2 books, 2 CDs of music, 3 CDs of spoken word. Has performed in Canada, England, and Australia, and has a regular CBC radio spot called Word is with Bob Jensen. So I hope you all appreciate and give him a really warm welcome here at the Restigouche Regional Museum. Thank you so much for being here, Bob.
Thank you, and welcome, everybody. I have a new book of poetry out called A Sense of Wonder, which is 50 poems I've written since 1914. So I'm going to be reading... Wow. Since 2014, yeah, I know. And you thought you were the oldest guy in the house. Since 2014. And I just want to let you know if anybody wants to take photographs or videos, you're certainly free to do that. And if you want to post it, that would be fine. And we have some free masks on the table back there if anybody wants a mask. And I'm going to go roughly about an hour. So I'll get right down to it with a poem I call Who But Daniel. And 30 years ago, I had the most remarkable dream. And all this time later, I still take comfort from that dream. I saw him in a dream so many years ago. Laughter beyond measure from that small aortic flow. Even now, I cannot help but smile as I recall the way I knew his heart on that rainy night, that fall. My voice was in his laughter, and his joy was in my soul. His love was in my breast, like the bonfire's warming coals. And when I shook the sun and bade him wake the lazy day, still I felt his laughter, and it kept the rain at bay. And all day long I wondered who the laughing child could be, for I could not place his eyes, but his soul was known to me. And though he never spoke a word, his message was quite plain, that his heart was full of living, that his joy was unrestrained. And who could solve a dream like this but Daniel in the den? How does a soul know what to choose to show the love within? But that night the rain kept falling, and his laughter left my ears. And it was the darkest evening, watered with the cruelest tears. For the hopeful place that we had set for one is yet to come would be taken from our table before the morning sun. Our tears were like November's darkened days of frozen rain, and the searing air we breathed, splinters pulled against the grain. And when the skies had cleared and the tears had drained away, I thought back to the recent dream I'd had upon that day. A laughing little boy without a single word to say, unbridled in his joy, like the leaping trout's ballet. Perhaps he made a shallow dive into the living stream, but still he saw the eddies where the sleeping rainbows dream. Perhaps he saw the sorrow that was coming on the dawn, and perhaps he let me know that the journey was still on. For who would share that dream but my Daniel in the den? And who knows what a soul might choose to show the love within? Thank you.
I wonder, Rob, just a suggestion. I wonder if you could try
No, I tried it last time without the mic and it just didn't, I couldn't quite project.
The mic is not quite as distinct.
Is the mic not working well? Is it?
Oh no, the mic is lots of volume.
Is the sound okay? Yeah?
It's just in the same beat. Okay.
Okay, well, we'll see as we go along.
I think you know all about that, because your dad used to have those.
Yeah. There were big ears too, like mine.
Yeah.
Out of all the wonderful things in nature, we can enjoy, like here in the summertime, still, there's nothing I love more than brilliant streaming sunshine. And I call this Ode to Morning Sunshine. She flows as silent river, as quicksilver, peeling back the earth's blanket of darkness. For beauty's thirst is constant for that river in the sky. Like morning church bells, she, the breath of God, the breath of the eternal, the currency of thirst and the trade winds of desire. And in these folding pastures, those golden heads of wheat that bow before her majesty are gilded of her kindness. Well, the genius of the dawn is to paint the heavens blue, that the sea cannot but imitate the deeper sea above it. And in the hidden depths of each abyssal sea are dragons of the darkness and dragons of the mind, each of which would wither in the full glare of that great unyielding burn. Earth, absorb her holiness like summer's gentle rain, the daughter of that spark from that moment in the long ago, when Yahweh clapped his hands, and out of boundless darkness leapt the phosphorus of life and the sacred burning heart of consecration. She flows across my face and deep into my breast, skips off the horizon like a small, flat foundling stone, thrown with a precision that mocks the law of gravity, where science and religion are one and are the same. Abjure each pool of dark sorrow, and like the rambling Baptist, prepare ye now the way, and make a straightened path, to wake the sleeping redbreast, who cannot sing but on your gentle shores, along the banks of twilight, when morning's cherished rays are a symphony of hope. Thank you. And I've got one here that goes back to when I was just a kid. I think I was 19 years old when I went to sea on the Irving oil tankers. And it was really quite an adventure for a young man. And on my first big trip, it was nighttime, and we were approaching England, but we couldn't see Europe yet. We knew we were still a ways off. But I was up on the bridge one night, and something really cool happened. I call this the evening's rose. I stood upon a bridge that had never touched the land, above a gambler's deck that had always shown its hands. The steel-eyed moon was portside on the heavy metal clouds, where dragons bade their time in that oriental shroud. And all around was softness in the sea and on the air, and the outline of our bow like the fighting Temeraire. The eastern breeze did bathe me like a babe in swaddling clothes. It bore a secret treasure, a ghostly evening rose. I didn't so much breathe it as assume it in my soul, like Mary into heaven where the Cyrus cotton rolls. A sweetness on the wind, such as I had never known, the night's gift heaven sent where the albatross has flown. Tell me, Master Wheelsman, please answer me, I pray. What is this on the wind? What is that fair bouquet? For all around is nothing, the moon, the sky, the sea, and the evening's sweet perfume, it is not known to me. The cargo on the wind, said he, is known to every man, for the sweetness that you savor is nothing but the land. For beauty to the mind, like the forest for the trees, invisible until it's lost, then found upon the breeze. Thank you. So in March of 2020, I was touring in Australia with a wonderful Scottish guitarist named Tony McManus. And actually that's when COVID hit and we lost the last week of our tour. But we spent a few days in a place called Mewling, and it was absolutely beautiful there. The people we were staying with had 5 acres, and they had wallabies and echidnas and parrots and corellas and all kinds of native creatures. There were apparently even platypus in the brook, although I never did see one. And one day I was sitting there on the side of this beautiful brook, and there was a fruit tree that was leaning over the brook, and I couldn't identify what the fruit was. It was kind of like an apple. They did tell me what it was, but I can't remember. But it seemed to me like Eden. You know, it was this fruit tree. I half expected a snake to come down and offer me a piece of fruit. So I was marveling at the beauty and the fauna and the flora, and I was also thinking how everything is inverted, because, you know, it was the afternoon where I was, but it was the middle of the night back home. And it was autumn in Australia, but it was spring in Canada. And I was sort of hanging in that direction off the earth, and people back home were hanging this way. So it just occurred to me that everything was kind of upside down. And years ago, I wrote a collection of poems describing the paintings of Marc Chagall. And I enjoyed that so much that I continue to sort of keep in touch with Chagall, as I sometimes put it. So this little poem I call Letter from Mewling Gardens is a letter to the artist Marc Chagall. Dear Chagall, I am sitting in a garden, Marc, where the fruit upon the vine is strange and nameless. Heavy laden boughs above the creek where ripples hide and wait for it to fall. A purple-breasted swamp hen has risen from the rushes, the sacred heart of Audubon, in this, the middle of the day, the middle of the night, the autumn sun of mid-March, crisping up gum trees against the sky like a razor, pasting them to blue that is beneath me here and all around the sun. Eucalyptus, Marc, white berries and clicking in the trees, and on the wind, a whistle, soft as an Apache signal, given to alert me to some secret I may never guess nor comprehend. Butterflies beyond counting, whose flight paths bear no logic, but express their tiny joy. And why would beauty deign to give the time of day to logic? For facts and solemn figures have nothing to teach beauty. And all at once the sky explodes, corellas, snow-white chattering, Antipodean doves against the sun, in whom God is well pleased. I am waiting in the sunshine for dusk, for wallabies, echidnas, and the platypus who lives in these dark waters. I need not see him, for his proximity alone is thunder in my chest. And the parrots, Marc, I swear to Christ, are fire in my boyful heart, beating here in heaven for each mystery in the bush along this winding stream. I wonder, was I claimed while I was sleeping? For I could rest forever on the banks of this cool creek without a worry or a need, contentment flowing from my heart as water from the reservoir high above the paddock. I want nothing but to stay that golden chariot, rein it in, arrest its Catholic orbit, so slight and imperceptible, yet bending hours and space against the dream time. Soon Chagall the ibises will roost upon the pines above the stony creek, where flakes of gold may still be found, reflecting back to heaven, the light below this world, where I am fairly hanging towards the Southern Cross, nailed there to the firmament, not by Roman soldiers, but by God in the beginning, as it was and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Your most affectionate friend in poetry, Bob. Thank you. I wonder if you'd mind just pulling the curtain over here. It's, thank you. It's quite.
Speaking of the sun when it
Yeah.
came down, but I can see how that would be a hindrance.
Hold on, that is good.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, there's, I think, there you go. Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Perfect.
Will that be enough?
Perfect, yeah, that's great, thank you. So I also travel to Denmark quite often, and I've become friends with a fellow there by the name of Peter, who not only lives in the village that my father's family comes from, but he actually owns my great-grandfather's farm. So I go there and I stay with him, and I walk the fields, and there's so much history there. I was out one day, and I found a Neolithic hand axe, a little scraping tool, and he has probably a dozen beautiful ones. They're very common. And anyway, so he likes to drag me all over Denmark and show me the sights. And one day we were in the lowlands of southern Zealand, driving through farmland, and he said, Bob, would you like to see the burial mound? And I said, hell yeah, where's the burial mound? And he said, over there. And I looked in the field and I couldn't see anything. There was no parking lot, there were no signs, there was absolutely nothing to indicate that anything was there. But we stopped the car, we walked into the field, and there's a 5,000-year-old Paleolithic site called Rönkebjerg. And it's about 30 feet long and 15 feet wide, with stones pointing out all around it. And at the back, there's a dolmen, two rocks with a rock on top, like Stonehenge, except it's smaller. So I was really excited because I've been to places like that before, but they always have museums and signs and parking lots, and it kind of detracts. And there was a real sense of discovery there. But my favorite thing about it was apparently there's a legend that says that the early Christians wanted to build a church right next to the burial mound. And so they planned it, and they brought in their materials, and they were making bricks. And every day, all these men would come and work on the church. And then they'd go home at night. And when they went home, the fairies would come out of the grave and destroy all the day's work. So then the men would come back, put it back together, and the fairies would come back. And this went on until finally the Christians said, okay, the pagans win, and they built their church somewhere else. So the place is called Rönkebjerg, and that's what I call the poem. Millennia before the Christ had flown to a cloud above the desert people, when mammoths freely roamed on a small Siberian island. Before the giant redwoods cracked the surface of the earth, there was Rönkebjerg. 5,000 years upon this field, a small island of sanctuary, a fortress against time, ringed with leaning stones to mark the final resting place of those sleeping immaculates. A dolmen is testament that love was here when sin was not permitted in the garden. Souls pristine as spring water beneath the giant oaks, who hold the land in place with hands as strong as God's. And when the ancients set to build their church unto the Christ, each evening in pure darkness, the fairies would descend from the fortress of this mound to kick the bricks asunder and destroy the day's hard labor, until the Christians left, surrendered to the pagan souls, and moved their house of worship away into the north. For the souls of those men sleeping in the ground under my feet are a church unto themselves, and would not deign to rest beneath the shadow of a steeple, newcomers so late to venerate this temple, where flint did light the night and pierce the racing heart of the morning's cautious red deer, sending tiny clouds from his nostrils into heaven. For his gods were the same as those so long laid down beneath this holy shrine on this prehistoric field. Thank you. And when I was a kid, I traveled differently. I hitchhiked and I backpacked, and I did it for years. And I really was all over the place, from way up in Alaska to the deep south. Even squeaked into northern Mexico, and had some great adventures. And one winter, a buddy of mine and I were in Edmonton, and it was the recession of '82, and there were no jobs, and it was cold. And we said, "Oh, let's go to Florida. We'll pick oranges and lay on the beach." So that was what we had envisioned. But when we got to Florida, even the agricultural jobs just weren't there, because there were just thousands of people who had been put out on the streets, because America doesn't have a social safety net the way we do. And when people are when they have hard luck, a lot of people end up on the street. And so it was not going to be a vacation laying on the beach. We arrived in the city of Tampa with about $20, and we had to really hustle to figure out how we were going to survive. So this is a true story, and I call it Tampa. What drew me to the holy streets of Tampa, where perdition and salvation walked together and shared the darkened corners where the wayward lay their heads when Saul reposes? Was it winter or recession that brought the great migration, providence or desperation that pulled us to your heart? Such cruelty I had not yet imagined. Broken men ignited, midnight torches like Nero's brilliant Christians, illuminating Roman streets with oil and wood and martyrdom. Such benevolence I had not yet imagined, kindness and charity that I did report as sacraments. And who were you, JC, with the initials of a savior and the piercing eyes of the devil? How did you come to purchase your accommodation in the cruel cage of Attica? What was the dark heart of your secret? Was it murder or something more sinister? For a soul can no worse stain than the lethal mark of Cain. We did not steal, but we ate the food you'd stolen. We did not trust you, but we let you watch our backs. For hunger and weakness are not so discerning as abundance and strength. We three, each in our own way, sought the eye of the needle, the narrow gate into the holy city. I dismounted and found it on the street, and beneath the bridges where bedrolls and refuse pass for an abode. For the gate was not a golden arch, but a broken road trodden by the unholy, the unclean, the untouchables. You too saw it in the charlatans, the false prophet who offered salvation for $100, but whose pernicious spell dissipated like the early morning fog before the sun at Tampa's heavy dawn. Tampa, thou holy city. Tampa, thou son of perdition, where salvation was offered for a beggar's alms and hobos carried scripture. In a little church on Franklin Street, I met one of your prophets, an old street fighter whose road to Damascus ended in the holy city, Tampa. He spoke to the killers, he preached to the whores, reached out to the junkies with dead eyes and open sores, gave hope to the hopeless with words like a dart, past tired ears to pierce broken hearts. Sons of perdition granted exemption, atonement traded for priceless redemption. I saw her at the organ, old and frail, erect and fearless, amazing grace and dignity and stature. A broken man approached her, dressed in rags and gaunt and cheerless, amazing fodder for the coming rapture. Told her a tale of hopelessness, of solitude and pain, how he'd failed both God and man, how his life was but a stain. Saw the goodness in her eyes as she took his filthy hands, raised her voice to heaven to invoke the Son of Man. The prayer that flowed was canticle, the tears that flowed a river. The tongues of fire above their heads gave my soul a shiver. A Pentecostal prayer in a language known to God raised a broken man to ecstasy, benediction we did laud. Felt his presence in the room, his pureness touched my heart, his grace like Moses' staff, making seas of sorrow part. Heard his voice against the wind, saw his face against the sun, felt his sorrow on my cheeks when the deluge had begun. Knew his grace as I lay sleeping, assailable, exposed, beneath the open sky in exhaustion's deep repose. For we had no door to sprinkle, no dispatch in the night. We beseech thee, pass us over until morning's cherished light. For we too might well have been enkindled in the night, like Nero's brilliant Christians, to give the pagans light. If thou wouldst seek the holy city, seek thee not a gate of gold, for the secret of the portal has 2,000 years been told. It is a rough-hewn highway the unholy seek to tread. We must count ourselves among them, see that they are loved and fed. For the architect of Eden and the one whose gate we seek walked with such as these, the lost, the lame, the meek. To reach the holy city and that splendid restive seat, walk thee not only among them, but anoint their blistered feet. Gather thee the stragglers from Medusa's drifting raft, that when he sees thee coming, he might kill the fatted calf. Thank you. I like to spend time with ghosts, and what I mean when I say that is when I go to a place that's ancient, it could be a church, it could be a graveyard, it could be an old city street, sometimes even just a junk shop, and I witness the humanity that has transpired in these places. I get a sense of the sacred, and I really like that sometimes. I enjoy going to graveyards and reading the stones and thinking about who the people were. I enjoy going to old churches and sitting there and thinking of the weddings and the funerals and the Christmas mornings. And so I've written a poem that I call Ghosts that talks about that a little bit. I look for them in rocky ruins and old train stations, hidden in the weeds along a fallen fence, in junk shop scrapbooks, faded photos of a dog named Rex from World War II. A heart carved into a blackened pew, set upon Italian marble, polished by 1,000 years, the shuffling of the faithful, leather carving stone for the Lord. I found them once gathered on an ancient street of cobblestone that had not changed since the time before the Black Death, when the sun still daily danced around the earth. There, the ragged fishmonger in his corner out of the rain. Here, a mason with a barrow to raise the great cathedral from the ashes of the wooden church that stood there long before it. They are all around me, and I am grateful for their company. They who know this place as I know the veins embossed on the backs of my hands. I gathered tiny wildflowers along a graveyard fence, placed them on a crumbling tomb, a dear one long forgotten. I will remember you for a while, I say, sit with you, bless you with a prayer, and keep you in my heart for as long as I can. I will make my small homage to that which was your life, that you might draw one breath before another evening blankets you in darkness. And I've got one here that's about the bitter cup that we call regret. And I think we all have regrets, but there's something that we can do about regrets. And that's what the moral, I guess, of this is. I call it the uncollected dawn. There can be no refund for the uncollected dawn, no second chance to sail upon a tide that's come and gone. The sister's fate will cackle at the dream that slipped away and see your tears as wages for a debt you can't repay. And should you wait upon the shore, bereft in endless rue, your dream upon the tide forgone will not return to you. For yesterday is ruthless, her name is penned in stone. She will not be corrected, though you tear your flesh from bone. Her verdict is beyond reproach, no convict may appeal. Her prison is the truth, and the truth she speaks, her seal. So will you serve your sentence as a boy or as a man, and look towards the east, and let the western sky be damned? The days will pass more quickly, and you will not feel alone if you set another's happiness 1 mile beyond your own. Forget regrets collected on your lonely prison shelf, and show the morning love that is not focused on yourself. For if yesterday was written by a foolish cocksure man, tomorrow will be written with the pen that's in your hand. Thank you. A couple of years ago, I was in the Church of St. Nicholas in Brussels with my youngest son, Noah. And there are so many ancient churches in Europe, but this one was, parts of it were almost 1,000 years old, and it really felt ancient. And one of the remarkable things about it is that there was a reliquary there with the 19 martyrs of Gorkum, who were hung in 1572 by Dutch Calvinists back during the religious wars. And the reliquary had 19 saints embossed on it. So these little figures were coming out, and the reliquary was near the candles that you could light. And I noticed that sometimes when the candles would flicker, the shadows of the little martyrs would become animated. So I thought, I'm going to make the saints dance tonight in Brussels. And that's what the name of this poem is. I call it, I Will Make the Saints to Dance for You in Brussels. I lit a tiny flame in an ancient sacred space today for you in Brussels, where the bones of 19 martyrs are testament to love that does transcend the burning flesh, even in deep repose. My heart is like that reliquary, holding something pure and trying hard to shine, reflecting flames lit with love and memory in grateful gold relief, where footsteps softly echo and the sharp scent of myrrh, of sacred myrrh, 1,000 years and counting, is burnt into the warped and varnished blackened wood. There is holiness here deep inside this darkened sanctuary. But how can I reach you when I am here and you are over there? I cannot take your distant hands. I cannot say I love you. I cannot write my gratitude upon the pale blue sky. But tonight, in breathless silence, I will reach across the heavens, for I will make the saints to dance for you in Brussels, where time stands still and medieval walls of sanctity shut out the hurried and profane world, where a patient God is listening for tears that softly fall upon a swirling marble floor, worn by centuries of pilgrimage and devotion, where the sacred heart of love still burns in breathless silence, fueled with penance and desire. Yes, tonight I will make the saints to dance for you in Brussels and hold you in this reliquary, trying hard to shine. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I've got one here about Jasper. I think, one of the great gems, natural gems, not only of Canada, but in the world. And I've lived there on 4 separate occasions. And the last time I was there, we were there for 4 years, and we spent an awful lot of time in the backcountry. And so this is just called Jasper. We were high as kestrels on that semi-precious stone, naked as the sun, icy water beating on our torsos as we left the jaded lake and headed for the heavens beyond the farthest ridge, where wilderness consumed us like a flame. Thoughts as pure as glacial streams, trickling, meandering, blood as red as wine from deep inside the sacristy, catching molecules of oxygen like crumbs of the Christ in a shining chalice to propel us to the peaks till we could reach no higher, and that the silken hem that every hand would touch, the fabled shores of Eden, a line between the mountains and the firmament, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, a world without end on the pinnacle of paradise, that semi-precious stone on that razor-sharp September afternoon. Thank you. There's a songwriter by the name of Ron Hines, and you probably know a song of his called Sonny's Dream. That was his most famous song. But he wrote another song with a pair of lines that say, he's thinking back to his youth, and he says, you barely savor the moment, and you spend a lifetime dwelling upon it. And I think anybody who's lived for a while can kind of relate to that. There are these iconic moments from our youth that we return to time and again. And for me, one of those moments is leaping off the cement pier at Charlotte Falls, as we used to do. And for that brief moment, you were just in the sky. It was just incredible. And it was one of the great things about living here was, we were just kids, and we'd hitchhike back to the falls, 13 years old, hitchhike back, and we'd have to walk past the dump, and we're scared of bears, but we'd do it. And sometimes we'd have to walk home, but it was great. We went back pretty much every day in the summer. And so I call this, "Oh, Where Are the Boys of Summer?" Oh, where are the boys of summer, skirting midnight garden walls, or standing high against the sky above the Charlotte Falls? And where are the boys of autumn on those evenings rare and cool, hurling stones of ardor high above the darkened school? And where are the boys of winter in that shack upon the ice, pulling smelts up from the darkness in that hidden paradise? Where are the boys of springtime, dreaming boyhood dreams of May, or courting death upon the ice floes in the semi-frozen bay? On a leaning cliff I perched, heard the waterfall's soft crash, exhaled forbidden incense, the afternoon's sweet hash. My skin drawn tight o'er bones as light as bullets in a gun, I knew on high that I could fly into that squinting sun. Too shy my leap towards the deep would feed the hungry rocks and shatter my illusion where Atropos fairly mocks. And if too far I set the bar when vaulting from that stone, into the breaking shallows I'd commit my flesh and bone. I felt my heart aflutter as I stepped into the sky, but not with apprehension. I was not afraid to die. It fluttered for the moment when I traded earth for heaven and leapt towards the falling sun, my soul now fully leavened. As my weightless body and the river fell as one, the falls and I converged where the young and fearless run. It pushed me to the bottom where the eel and rainbow rest, a baptism of thunder and thunder in my chest. Curled like a tumbleweed and one now with the flow, no care could ever find me in that weightless world below. Now as days fill up my soul and make the morning sigh, I still recall a moment lost between the earth and sky. And when I find a rocky perch or cascade far below, I will not hesitate to leap where prudent men won't go. For all the gray tomorrows I might face before I die, I'll risk them for a moment lost between the earth and sky. Oh, where the boys of summer, skirting midnight garden walls, or standing high against the sky above the Charlotte Falls. Thank you. Here's another one. Another great thing about growing up here was springtime. It was really quite magical. And one of the more foolhardy things we used to do was we'd go jumping on the ice, chunks of ice in the bay. And this talks a little bit about that. When Restagush was resting 'neath its blanket in the spring, and the cricket and cicada were nowhere to be found, our boyful hearts were cresting for to hear the grackles sing, with April's sun arresting growing patches of wet ground. Ice along the shore, the temptation of the deep, forbidden foolish pleasures in the steely cold blue bay. Swagger to the fore, from flow to flow we'd leap, no second hand to measure that treasured time at play. Icy breeze and burning sun, temptations of the flesh, when first our skin availed itself to bleeding bright blue skies. Budding trees, water run, fulfillment of each wish, when April's waking hearts prevailed, feeding slight new sighs. Spring was never ending, and innocent the day, with summer always on the cusp, and winter in retreat, and duty only pending on my playful April bay, and hearts would quickly mend when summer would entreat. Here's to spring. And I have another poem that's kind of nostalgic, reminiscent. And originally I had written this as lyrics for a maritime singer-songwriter by the name of Lenny Gallant, who you may know. And he was going to set music to it, but another fellow kind of beat him to it, a songwriter from Alberta by the name of Braden Gates. So he's made it into a song, but it's written in a way that it could be either a song or a poem, and I call it The Pale-Eyed Minstrel Boy. He was born thirsty for the early morning sky, inhaled the sun like orange juice, and drank the bright dawn dry. He woke the sleeping swallow with his laughter and his tears, while the world slept around him in his younger, wilder years. His pale blue eyes were question marks, his heart was on his sleeve, and a dirge was on his lips when the full moon was bereaved. Hidden in his breast, in a place he dare not name, a shattered heart kept time for the love that never came. And who in spring's bright morning, while the sun is in his way, thinks to count the hours while the lilacs bloom in May? And who, when they are parting in summer's youthful rain, ever has the notion they might never meet again? I knew him in the night when the drunken moon did call, and in the squinting morning when contrition's tears did fall. And all the locals knew him too, his thumb out on the road, reflecting homeward lights like the ghost of Tom Joad. Now April is a-comin', ice is breaking on the shore, but that pale-eyed minstrel boy don't come around here anymore. Last time that I saw him, he was running for a train, only time he had the sense to come in from the rain. And who in spring's bright morning, while the sun is in his way, thinks to count the hours while the lilacs bloom in May? And who, when they are parting in summer's youthful rain, ever has the notion they might never meet again? Sometimes I miss that minstrel boy who drank the bright dawn dry. I guess I never thought he'd leave when I was young and high. I miss his easy laughter, and I miss his easy tears. I miss his easy love in his younger, wilder years. Just once I caught a glimpse of him. It took him by surprise. I could see the years written on those pale blue eyes. For there he stood before me like a man out on parole. He was looking in the mirror and searching for his soul. And who in spring's bright morning, while the sun is in his way, thinks to count the hours while the lilacs bloom in May? And who, when they are parting in summer's youthful rain, ever has the notion they might never meet again? Thank you. And I've got one here. It's one of my nature poems. I write a lot of stuff about autumn, a lot of stuff. I've written dozens and dozens of poems about the moon, and this one's about a sunset. I think it was in August on the north shore of Prince Edward Island. I call it the Milkpill. The sky and I and my pale eyes were all of one blue mind as the sun fell fast in battle on the cruel field of time. And kneeling by a thunderhead, the afternoon's soft mizen, she tilted as a milk pail on the mercury horizon. She poured her blood like love upon that blue unsettled floor. It raced toward my heart as I withered on the shore. And I without a staff, for I knew she meant to flee, I could not part the waters of that gentle blood-red sea. And though we had been lovers, where the lilac may be found, I did not move to save her as she began to drown. And as our eyes were locked and it burned me like a flame, she slipped beneath the water without a trace of blame. And long I stood and mourned her, the love no man can save, as even laid a cloak of royal purple on her grave. Thank you. And another one here about nature. I think certainly in this part of the world, nature's greatest act is autumn, and that's what this one is about. It was written after I had been out on a hill near a pond. The hill was just on fire with maples, and the geese were splitting the sky. It was a perfect autumn day. Before this blazing bonfire of the vanities of God, when soft the warm west wind is a feather on my face, playful as the infant's laughing eyelashes, a monarch in the sweet caress of flight. These eyes and ears of God, this breath stolen of wonder, the hungry skin of solitude, a mouth that chafes for one small drop of nectar to quench the thirst for color in the soul. I am high upon this holy breeze, basking in the warmth of the valley's maple embers, as roaming V's of southbound geese herald in the dawn and split the morning sky, like kindling for yearning in the hungry hearth of man, dividing into realms of east and west the captive heavens, each of whom would kill the fatted calf and claim the wayward son as its own. Raise your arms in wonder, cast the shadow of a dove, expel your final breath to God in 3 small words. It is done, for the heart of man is crucified upon this peaceful hill where Providence is burning for beauty on its knees. And I thank you. Like everybody else, I occasionally am prone to the odd morbid thought. And one day I thought, geez, what if everybody woke up in the morning but me? What if I didn't make it through the night? There's a lot that's left unsaid. And I thought, if I was going to, die through the night, I would like to leave a message. So that's what this poem is. I call it Where Pilots Often Strand. And as you'll see, the pilots that I refer to are pilot whales. If you should wake, and I should not, when dawn is leaking light, to sink that ocean liner, the rolling, pitching night, then I have left this message where the pilots often strand, words below the high tide mark written in the sand. First tell the sailing swallow that I have gone away, for she pulled me from my dreams each rough and ragged day. She painted all the heavens like tinsel in the sky, with grace that made my heart race. I will hate to say goodbye. Then go and tell the ocean, that great salacious sea, for I rode upon her back when I was wild and free. Her beauty was an anchor for a freely drifting fool, my prodigal repentance, that great baptismal pool. And will you tell the mountains that race towards the sky, for I rode their brooding shoulders when I was young and high. And though I had to leave them when November's winds were cold, yet still their highest peaks lay a claim upon my soul. Then break it to the lilac, and careful what you say, for we were childhood sweethearts, and sweethearts to this day. I still recall the tiny drop of nectar on my tongue, the sweetness of her kiss when I was pure and young. And go and tell the open road that waits for my return, the pavement that is cool now, but still it yearns to burn. For she was my companion, and ever was she nigh, and the three of us enraptured, the land, the sky, and I. And will you give my lovers the tidings on that day, though they have long been scattered, one last word I do pray, that my memories were sweetened with every passing year, and if I was unkind, I have paid with many tears. And go and tell the kids that run the meadow ragged, and taunt the morning's raptor from that hillside steep and jagged, that their kicking in the pasture and their carefree ambling way has kept an old heart young as he watched the morning's play. And last of all, your final call, the cosmos' favorite ruin, that angel and that devil, the drunken, reckless moon. For we have laughed so many times, and many times we cried, and we have burned the midnight oil when those we love have died. So go and tell them all upon that fateful day that my final words were thank you for the debts I'll ne'er repay. For I have been a debtor from the day that I arrived to the beauty, love, and wonder that kept my soul alive. Tell them I was happy beneath the aching sun, where that miracle did find me, the newborn's joyful cry, that I raced to each new mountain that seemed so out of reach, and upon the dawn I saw the great white sperm whale make his breach, that I loved the desert sun and the blooming cactus rose, and I walked the Athabasca when that mountain highway froze, that the northern lights did beckon with their winter rainbow run, that I stood in brilliant daylight beneath the midnight sun, that I saw the great cathedrals where the word of God is steep, that the city's moonlit skylines were known to make me weep, that I love to haunt the mornings, each bright, exquisite dawn, that the moon never tired of me, and oh, how we got on. That I loved and I was loved, no matter where I ran, a grateful beneficiary of the brotherhood of man. So if you should wake and I should not, when dawn is leaking light, don't weep for me, I pray thee, for I will be all right. And if you ever loved me while I ran my mortal race, one more love I ask you for the man who'll take my place. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to do a long one and then a couple of short ones, and I think that'll probably be about it. If you look at the mess that is the United States of America right now, if you look at slavery and Black Lives Matter, racism, Donald Trump, republicanism, the Trail of Tears, the Ku Klux Klan, almost all of it can be traced back to a poisoned doctrine that we call manifest destiny. And this poem is about manifest destiny and how it led America to where it is now. I call it Bethlehem, Nebraska, because I wanted to set it in the heartland of America. There is no Bethlehem, Nebraska, but Bethlehem also, of course, was the birthplace of Christ. So that was why I chose Bethlehem as the title. And a voice cried from a field deep within the heartland, Bethlehem, Nebraska, where cornstalks tower higher than a man, and the sugar beet and sorghum are the promised milk and honey of the faithful. And he did raise his eyes above the vast horizon and spake unto the Lord, saying plainly, Lord, our ships did bear the banner of the Christ when 40 days we wandered upon the open sea, and first we spied the shores of the fabled promised land. And we did break the soil and subjugate the savages, those enemies of Christ, and march them to the sea, which they could not divide. And their tears were like a river in which to cleanse the mark of Cain upon their heathen souls. And the wind was still and quiet, and no bird made a sound, and silence hung like rope above the gallows, filling all immensity as stars against the pitch of even's endless chasm, when drunk the moon is sleeping and truant from the heavens. And we did rise and kill and eat as it is written, and drove the filthy bison from the greatness of the land, that we might sow and harvest, and we did make a mountain of their bones upon the plains, in testament to destiny, a monument to God and his favor on the faithful. And the wind was still and quiet, and no bird made a sound, and silence hung like rope above the gallows, filling all immensity as stars against the pitch of even's endless chasm, when drunk the moon is sleeping and truant from the heavens. And it was written down in the scriptures of the Lord, slaves, obey your masters, according to the flesh, with fear and trepidation, and sincerity of heart as unto Christ. And so, Lord, we did gather them to build the new Jerusalem, to lift and tote and harvest all the cotton, like clouds plucked from the heavens. And we did send those pale nights unto the furrowed lands, riding into darkness to illuminate the one true cross of the Messiah. For the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. And was it not much better that they should lose an eye than that their wretched bodies be cast upon the lake of fire, which cannot be extinguished? And the wind was still and quiet, and no bird made a sound, and silence hung like rope above the gallows, filling all immensity as stars against the pitch of even's endless chasm, when drunk the moon is sleeping and truant from the heavens. And all of this our Father, which surely art in heaven, from the goodness of our hearts for the glory of the Lord, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for one and for all. And we have kept our covenant, manifest to destiny, as servants of the Christ in pious veneration. And yet our hour is waning, and terror fills our temples, and blood flows in our streets. And open sores do blemish the children of the faithful, while the Pharisees who rule the New Jerusalem devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. Are we become like Job? Why hast thou forsaken us, who only live to serve thee? And the wind was still and quiet, and no bird made a sound, and silence hung like rope above the gallows, filling all immensity as stars against the pitch of even's endless chasm, when drunk the moon is sleeping and truant from the heavens. And then a voice emerged from inside the sawyer's breast as he stood upon the promised land in Bethlehem, Nebraska. And it held no rolling thunder, but a searing bolt of lightning that God has called the truth, and spake unto him plainly. When first you made the landfall, and took those holy men, immaculate and pure, and herded them as beasts unto the world's edge, you drove a cruel nail into the open palm of Christ, and your righteousness and valor were but as filthy rags in the sight of the Most High. And the wind began to whisper, and the fowls of the air sent forth a hopeful song. And the moon, now full and sober, did rise above the plain, and sent a beacon forth to light the way with truth. Your mountain on the plains, left bleaching in the sun, did desecrate my garden, and sent the naked fleeing to hunger and privation. And you did sow destruction, and a rape is not a harvest. And the labor in your fields was an abomination, for it is written in the scriptures that the laborer deserveth his wages. And know ye not that God desires mercy, that kindness is a benediction? Upon the devil's steeds did your pale legions ride into the hopeless night, and every flame they lit brought darkness to the land, and pestilence unto the heart of man. And the wind began to whisper, and the fowls of the air sent forth a hopeful song. And the moon, now full and sober, did rise above the plain, and sent a beacon forth to light the way with truth. And it was written long ago, 2,000 years and counting, render unto Caesar those things that are Caesar's, and unto God those things that are God's. But you have made my house a den of thieves and robbers, for it is your chosen prophets who devour widows' houses, who strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. For they are hungry wolves set among my flocks, and you, of all the men in Canaan, should know them by their fruits. And nations are not holy or profane, for such is the dominion of the hearts and souls of men. And the wind began to whisper, and the fowls of the air sent forth a hopeful song. And the moon, now full and sober, did rise above the plain, and sent a beacon forth to light the way with truth. And the terror in your temples and the blood upon your streets are the wages of violence that you worship, which is the stone foundation on which you built your mansion. And the sores upon the faces of your mothers, sisters, brothers, the wages of antipathy and greed. For when they lie upon the road, you clutch your sword and cross against the heart of mercy, which does spread that plague afar, like a spark into the tinder, until now you cry to heaven for the blood of one sweet lamb, unblemished, to sprinkle on your door. And the high priests who rule the New Jerusalem were not decreed by God, but purchased with the wages of rigidity and ignorance, chosen in contempt of the frailty of kindness by one such as these, stewards of the promised land in Bethlehem, Nebraska. Petition not the Lord against the hardness of your heart or the depths of your indifference, the scourge of your greed. For the answer to your prayer is that each man hath a choice. So, physician, heal thyself. Go and sell all your possessions, and come and follow me. Take my yoke upon thee, and ye shall find rest unto your soul. Let the dead bury the dead. Let kindness be your worship, generosity your prayer, and it will be sweet music in the mansion of the Lord. And the wind began to shout, and the fowls of the air filled the world with canticle. And the full moon was eclipsed by the brightness of the sun, and the truth did burn a hole in the sawyer's supplication on the rich plains of the Holy Land of Bethlehem, Nebraska. Thank you. Thank you.
That must be one of your favorites, is it?
Pardon me?
That must be one of your favorites.
It
Took a lot of work.
It did take a lot of work. A lot of writing went into that one. Now I have two more poems. Both of them are short, and nobody loves this place more than I do. I can tell you that. This is home like no other place has ever been home. I love the people. I love the geography. I love August. To me, August in Restigouche is just heaven. But when we were little, there were predators in this community, and they hurt people, and they got away with it. And a lot of those people were not able to raise their own voices because they had been so destroyed. So I wrote this to try to give them a voice, and also because we can't forget these things, because if we forget them, they'll happen again. So I call this a heavy millstone. We gathered, we the faithful, when summoned by that bell. The small, the weak, the innocent, drawn to its knell. 3 hours hid the sun when that vulgar show began. The rapist with the Eucharist upon his filthy hands. Hands that tore the fleece from the smallest faithful lamb, and hands that left the soul defiled and primed it to be damned. And when his rape had finished and Mass had then begun, he placed the holy host upon the slaughtered lamb's young tongue. 100 chosen in their pews knew well the Father's sin, but offered up those trusting doves, their precious, helpless kin. Men who to a burning house to save the child within would rush without a thought, allowed that sacrificial sin. And women, selfless shepherds, who were turned back at the inn, sat silent and obedient while the faithful flock was thinned. And in that great cathedral, built to glorify his God, the bishop killed the lamb when he spared the priest his rod. And for every priest and layman who hid the vulgar truth, may there be a heavy millstone to justify lost youth. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I've got one poem left, and before I read it, I would like to thank Spencer and the Restigouche Regional Museum and Bonamie for having me. I'd like to thank the Tribune and CIMS for helping get the word out. And Michael Levesque, who's a local photographer, he did the cover shot for my new book, and you can see it on the poster. It's a beautiful photograph, and he's worth checking out. And I want to thank you all for coming and for listening to my little poems. And I will say that if you're interested in I also do music, and I've written a book, a novel about Dalhousie, and I've got a lot of stuff on my website, and it's The website is firsttimesinceaugust.com. It's named after a record I made when I was a kid, still living here. And I also have some merch at the back. I have a tour t-shirt from Australia, and I have 3 CDs. My old First Time Since August record that I made in 1984, I think, and 2 spoken word CDs as well. So thank you once again, and I'd be happy to talk to you later. I'm not shaking hands during COVID, as I think a lot of people have kind of given up on that. I much more prefer the Japanese little bow. I think it's much more dignified. So anyway, this last poem is me reminiscing about my youth in Dalhousie. And I call it In the Long, Long, Long Ago. From Christmas to my birthday was a long, long row to hoe, when mornings were eternal, in the long, long, long ago. And June until September past my window slowly wend, for I can still remember summer days that had no end. A lifetime in each morning, each afternoon and age, and sunshine tightly tethered to each daybreak's bright front page. Along the creeks and beaches I searched for hidden treasure, but overlooked that polished gem, a day too long to measure. And I too young to savor, when time was not our master, a lifetime's greatest glory, those mornings in my pasture. When August was the dream on those dog day afternoons, beneath the pure white wisps so eloquently strewn. From my birthday until Christmas was a long, long row to hoe, eternal rosy school days in the long, long, long ago. In rubber boots and blue jeans, I'd take to April's streets, where Joyce in white and tartan made my young heart skip a beat. September and October filled the purple nights with chill, while November's mediocre stab at winter was a thrill. To break the brittle surface of each newly frozen pond would wake the little furnace neath the hand knit I had on. But now the sun is fleeting, how it races across the sky, and I the one repeating, how quick the seasons fly. While every schoolyard cry, still a prayer unto the morning, and each sun rising high, the face of God adorning. And I, a child of years now, on this long, long row to hoe, but once I knew forever, in the long, long, long ago. Thank you very much. Thank you very kindly.